So hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 239 of Level Up, 60 minutes, of course, of live Q&A, where your questions drive the show. Today, we're discussing how to achieve an agile mindset. It's the first in our series on this topic in 2024, and is really relevant for absolutely everybody, whether you're in sales or delivery, if you're in finance, if you're at the front of office or the back office, wherever you are. This is a show for you. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you can find out so much more about what we do in our channel. So do give this video, please, a like and subscribe to find out much more about APMG International. Blanche is over in the social chat if you're joining live. So please do let her know your name and, of course, the city from where you're joining around the world. She's going to post some links for you so that you can vote up the questions that you would most like answered, and, of course, for you to be able to add your own as well. And if your questions are selected, then your name's going to appear in the credits at the end of the show. So do get those in early and stay with us to see all of that happening. Embracing a flexible, adaptive approach to problems and projects is one way of demonstrating that we are building an agile mindset, incredibly useful, of course, in a fast-changing environment of, say, technology or business. So how can we go about this? What are the practical approaches that we can all take to get better at that? To help us out are a brilliant panel today, so let's jump straight in and meet them all. Bina Champaneria is an accomplished trainer and coach who works with a broad client base across the UK and Europe, having spent time managing projects in agile environments. Bina knows what it is to lead with influence and authenticity. A strong networker with a commitment to professional development. We're delighted to welcome her back to the panel today. Welcome, Bina.
Thank you very much, Nick. Hello, everybody. Great that you're here. This is a fantastic subject, so I'm looking forward to some discussions and, of course, your questions as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Cindy Hancock rejoins today. She is, of course, an international trainer and instructional designer over at Phlox Training in South Africa. She blends leading-edge instructional design techniques with passion and enthusiasm for every subject, supporting a wide range of clients, including people like the United Nations and the Non-Violence Project Foundation. She mentors and coaches brilliantly. Welcome back to Level Up, Cindy.
Thank you so much. Great to be back. Super topic that we've got. Excellent panel. Very excited.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you, Cindy, for joining. Farah HEBA rejoins today. She is, of course, product owner and trainer over at Agile, where her client base extends from the public to the private sector and across many fast-paced and culturally diverse environments. With a keen attention to detail, Farah focuses on bringing the very best out of every client and their teams, of course. Welcome back to Level Up, Farah.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everybody. Hello to all the viewers that we're having today. Well, it's an amazing topic, so we're waiting for your questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Malini Jayaganesh joins today. She's a strategic advisor and coach, of course, at ITSM Hub over in Australia and Director Emeritus for the Business Relationship Management Institute. With a lifelong purpose to elevate others, Malini has championed diversity and inclusion throughout her professional life. Welcome back, Malini.
Thank you very much for having me back. I can see we have a lot of questions coming in. Can't wait to get started.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Also rejoining today, we have a very exclusive panel today, haven't we? Very experienced as well. Allan Kelly, he's a coach and consultant. He specializes in Agile with OKRs with a principal focus on workflow, strategies and products. He's also an author and has several books about Agile. We'll talk about those a little bit more, I think, later on in the show. Thinking about business strategy and delivering that for technology companies and the like. So welcome back to Level Up, Allan.
Thanks for having me back, Nick. Can I say to our audience, I hope something we say today is going to stick in your mind and keep you thinking the rest of the day, because fundamentally, that's the agile mindset. It's questioning and it's thinking for yourself.
That's a fantastic way to start the show. Thank you so much. We should swap roles. I think, Allan, again, you should come into this seat, my friend. Really very good indeed. Mridul Tandon completes our on-screen expert panel today. He is, of course, trainer and consultant with Raj Khanna Associates, based over in Delhi in India, where he promotes leading practice in project and program management. With a background in marketing, Mridul is always looking to the future, helping his clients figure out what they need to do to improve outcomes and deliver value. Welcome back to Level Up, Mridul. Thank you so much indeed. We're just working in the background to try and fix one of our video feeds, so we'll work on that and get that fixed momentarily. Of course, the show can't work without our producers online, so it's brilliant to see so many of you joining in on LinkedIn and on YouTube. But also, we need a question master for today, and delighted to welcome back Charlotte Miller, who I think is joining from Yorkshire today.
Yes, I'm in the wilds of a very cold Yorkshire this morning. I'm standing in for Shachicha, who's busy in our Indian office, welcoming some new colleagues.
All right. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. And on that note, and as we welcome lots and lots of folks online, it's really brilliant to see you all joining in. Do introduce yourselves if you're watching us online. Say hi. Let us know your name and the city from where you're joining. Blanche is really looking forward to getting to know you. And I can see Shanice Mitchell-Cox has also joined in today as well. So that's great. All right, very good. Let's take our first question then, please, to the panel. Charlotte.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Our first question is from Mark. And Mark asks, what would you do to change a team to use a more agile mindset?
All right. Okay, very good. What would you do to change a team to use a more agile mindset? Allan, why don't you start us off, please, and then we'll go to Farah.
Yeah, so I'm always keen to get people experiencing it right at the start. I'm sure several other panelists have their own favorite exercises. I have mine. I won't explain them, take too long. But the key thing is to get people doing things with their hands, involve their muscle memory. I use balloons and paper planes. And secondly, to then get them to reflect and talk about what they've done and draw the lessons out of those exercises. Because Agile is about enrolling people and respecting their voice. So get them to do something, to really experience it collectively as a team, and then get them to reflect and talk about it so they can learn their own lessons.
That's a really lovely idea, isn't it? We tend to forget about, kinesthetic learning, learning by movement, learning by doing things. Okay. And if you can engage people in that kind of process, both mentally and also physically, then it's much more likely that they're going to retain that information. So yeah, thank you very much indeed, Allan. Great start for us. Farah, your thoughts, please. Then we'll go to Cindy.
Thank you, Nick. Well, I totally agree with what Allan has just said. Hands-on being the first thing to do, that's, let's say, the basis. There is something else that I can get from my experience is making sure that people understand the why of the shift. Why do we want to shift from a specific mindset to another one? What are the triggers? What are the things that are making us want to look for something else, to test something else? That's the first thing. The second thing is do not underestimate the people that can be ambassadors of that mindset. If you already have people that are in there, that have that culture and that can share what it will bring to your company, to your team, do not underestimate them and use them as your ambassadors, as your champions.
Thank you very much indeed. Use those exemplars as your champions. Use those ambassadors. Use the folks to amplify your voice and your thinking. Great advice. Thank you so much, Farah. And Cindy, your thoughts, please. Then we'll hear from Bina.
Thank you so much. And I do agree with what my fellow panelists have said. But for me, in my experience, what I did is I started small and then I iterated. So I began by implementing agile practices really gradually, starting with small, low-risk projects perhaps, or a specific team to pilot these agile methodologies. What I've also done is I've encouraged experimentation and learning from both the successes and the failures, and then using retrospectives to really reflect on what has worked well and what could be improved.
Thank you very much indeed. Excellent advice. Thank you so much. This is really great. What a great question to actually start the show off. So thank you very much indeed, Cindy. Bina, your thoughts? Then we'll hear from Malini.
Yeah, I think everything the fellow panelists have said is really, really good stuff. And if I can give an example, actually, where these things came into place. So one of the universities where I worked, we wanted to change the style of teaching. We wanted to sort of put away what we did and try something new. So the management created what we call a safe environment, allowed us to experiment, allowed us to be creative, taught us various ways of teaching as well. And then we ran workshops where we would collaboratively think of new ideas, try things out, use post-it notes and all that kind of thing. And that was very, very helpful. So collectively, we were being creative and trying something new. But a key point was that the safe environment was created, so we were allowed to fail and experiment. I think that was important.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. It's quite true, isn't it? It's providing that kind of safe space, if you like, where people can, to your point, fail fast, and get over that and move on to the next challenge. Very, very important indeed. So thank you. That's a cultural thing that I think that we can all help develop, that sense of belonging, that sense of security and this kind of thing is very important. And Malini, your thoughts on this, please.
I think something that complements all of the suggestions made by the other panelists is actually giving an opportunity for your team to attend training together, right? And this is not just for the purpose of achieving a certification, but the fact is, by attending the training, you're actually carving out time for them away from their business as usual work to dwell on this, thing that you want them to learn about. It'll also help them to identify behaviors that they have to unlearn, which is a really important part of acquiring a new mindset. And it also signals that to them that this is something that is important, that you're willing to invest in, for their growth and for the organization's benefit as well. And if you do pick a really good trainer, then they'll be able to reinforce the why and all the other things that we've been talking about as well.
Right, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Mridul, we lost you for a little while, but I think we've managed to get the connection back again just in time. So your thoughts on this? How would you go about changing a team to adopt a more agile mindset?
What I feel is that we have to encourage some team activities where there is more informal interaction. Because once people try to know each other and shed their inhibitions, they will come closer and there will be a sense of, trust and transparency in them. So that's what I feel very strongly about it.
It's quite important, isn't it? The informal thing, it really does break down barriers and allows people to be more of themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, have you ever noticed in different cultures, company cultures, it's a privilege as a consultant when you work with different organizations and you've been in a room and someone really senior comes in and everybody stops talking. Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Sort of says, that organization definitely needs to adopt that approach, Mridul. So, thank you very much indeed. Well, what a brilliant first question. Let's jump over to social if we can, see who we've got online in the production team today. If you're online, then you are our producers of the show and you really do set the direction and so on. Welcome to Suchitra. She is in our Bangalore office today. So welcome, Suchitra, as a viewer on a Monday. Goodness me, that's very unusual for her, rather than the question master role. And Ranganath, welcome, my dear chap, joining us also from Bangalore in India. Great to have you on the team today. So do get your questions in to the panel in due course. We look forward to listening to those and answering those for you. And Deepti, she also joins today from Bangalore, and it's her first Level Up session. So if you're in the chat, give a warm welcome, please, to Ranganath and also to Deepti. That would be really fantastic. All right, so welcome, everybody. And finally, we've got Dinesh. He's joining from Germany today. I'm not sure where. It's a big country, but we'll figure that out shortly. Welcome to the Level Up community, Dinesh. Brilliant to have you as part of the team online today. All right, excellent. Let's move on, please, Charlotte, and we'll take our next question for the panel.
Thanks, Nick. Second question that perhaps I should have started with is from Mark. Mark asks, how would you define an agile mindset, and can you give some examples?
All right, okay. Well, Mridul, why don't you start us off and give us your thoughts?
Okay, what I believe is an agile mindset. Primarily, we have to be open that there can be better ways of doing it. And unless until we have that kind of a commitment to improvise ourselves and improvise the process, what we are doing, and move out of our comfort zone, because normally status quo is the biggest block in an agile mindset. So
Thank you very much.
We need to think beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Think beyond the present moment. Think outside your comfort zone. What a great quote, actually, for this particular episode. Really good idea. Bina, your thoughts, then we'll go to Malini.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Mridul said about getting out of your comfort zone. And it's about breaking habits. And it's about having not a fixed mindset where we just always do things the way we do, but having a growth mindset where you're willing to kind of experiment, take a chance, which does mean getting out of your comfort zone as well.
Yeah, it really does. I think we all have bias to some extent. We have thought pathways almost that define how we think. Now, sometimes this can be a very powerful thing, but also sometimes it can be a little bit of a blocker. It's definitely worthwhile trying to do those mental gymnastics and exercise your brain and allow yourself that freedom of a different way, to look at a similar kind of problem. Malini, your thoughts, please, and then Cindy.
Picking up on getting out of the comfort zone, I think one of the things is also being able to collaborate with people whom you perhaps may not usually work with. So it might be across functions or across other teams. All of you, starting off with the same purpose in mind and willing to learn and share, your knowledge with each other.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That sharing of the knowledge between the team is so very, very important, isn't it? And spending time with people who inspire you and think differently and encourage you to do the same is a really great approach. So thank you very much indeed. Cindy, your thoughts, then we'll go to Farah.
Thank you so much. And two things I was going to mention was cross-functional collaboration and continuous learning, which has already been mentioned. So I will go and lean into empowerment and ownership. So when we are empowering our team members to take ownership of their own work and decisions, we really encourage that self-organization and autonomy within the team. I think it's also important to have some feedback loops throughout the development process, when we're doing continuous learning, that we can gather input from various stakeholders, maybe some end users or team members, and that we use techniques such as user feedback sessions, really asking people, what was your experience? How did you feel about, the way we are pivoting into a different mindset? Have a bit of a retrospective reflection time on past experiences and really identify those areas for improvement. And where possible, we can even bring data in and make data-driven decisions.
Thank you very much indeed. And Farah, final thoughts on this one?
Well, to close this up, I would add that it's also making sure that you're preoccupied with delivering customer value. So making sure that, of course, you're working in self-organized team, that you're adapting rapidly, and that you're creating a safe environment, but always keeping in mind that delivery, that value delivery.
Thank you so much. Excellent. All right. Very good. Well, interesting question, Mark, and thank you for kind of setting out the stall, if you like, near the top of the show so that we can understand, what it is really, or at least a working definition of what an agile mindset should and could be. Let's move on, if we can, Charlotte, please, and we'll take our next question.
Next question is from Mark again. How would an agile mindset help my project to be successful?
Well, this is the essence, really, isn't it, of agile projects, so I think one begets the other. Allan, why don't you start us off, introduce us to how these two things dovetail together so well?
So some of I would in another context take issue with the concept of project. When you're in a project setting, for me, the defining feature is the dates. It's the dates and the deadlines. And you bring them to the fore, and your mindset is to focus on the dates and work back. So your mantra is deliver early, deliver optimize, deliver often, deliver early, deliver often. That allows you to do things like getting feedback and some of the other things we just talked about. So optimize for small batches, small amounts of work, reduce the work in progress. If anyone remembers the old game show Weakest Link, and for every question the contestants have to decide, do you bank the money or do you take a more ambitious question and go for? In Agile, you're constantly saying bank, 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 release, release, release. You know, only if you release, only if you give people things can you get the feedback. Only if you release can you unlock the value. And if you're constantly releasing, for example, every 2 weeks, how much of a deadline can you miss? What you're building may change, but the deadline is unmissable.
Just kind of typing that up for the social team at the moment. I love that quote. I'm just going to play it back to you if I may. All right. So it's all about the game show. And in Agile, I think what I heard you talking about was in Agile, you're constantly banking the money by doing this iterative release,
Yes.
release, release. So you're not in danger of sliding backwards, which you may be if you continue to pursue other approaches where you have to define something quite rigidly and then deliver it over a much longer period of time. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, very good, Nick.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Bina and then we'll hear from Mridul.
Yeah, thank you. An agile mindset is one where you're willing to learn, you're willing to experiment, you're going to explore. So we don't know what we're developing. We've got an idea of what we want. So having that mindset to understand that we will get there, but we need to work together collaboratively. We need to build something. We need to test it. We need to get feedback loop, learn from that. So that's our iterative development where what we're trying to do is develop a product that's going to be right, one that the customer wants, and that should lead to success. So we develop iteratively with the customer involved. And then, as was mentioned, we deliver in chunks, we deliver in increments. So we're seeing progress along the way, and catching success hopefully along the way as well.
Thank you so much indeed. Thanks very much indeed, Bina. A great answer to that question, and I think it's worthwhile bearing that concept in time. I really liked the analogy that we were, that Allan introduced us there to that game show. Whether it's and you may feel actually on some projects that you might have worked on, it's all snakes and no ladders. But I can assure you, if you take this approach, you can banish more of the snakes, perhaps, or at least navigate your way around them a little better. All right, very good. Thank you so much indeed. Charlotte, I can see we've got lots of questions stacking up. Also, a bit of a shout out to the social team. Do please jump in, everybody who's online, ask a question, start a debate. That's the whole point about Level Up. We're here to help each other develop this. And also, if you have an approach that you would like to recommend, then make that comment in the chat and we'll pick it up and we'll bring it in as a question to the channel to kind of see what their thoughts are on it. Okay, I'll come back to the social chat in a few moments for another shout out. In the meantime, Charlotte, let's take our next question, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a live question from one of our fantastic colleagues, Shanice. What role does continuous learning play in maintaining an agile mindset, and how can organizations promote a culture of learning?
Okay, all right. So, Cindy, why don't you start us off? You're a big promoter of continuous learning throughout our adult careers. So what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you so much, Nick. I believe that continuous learning is like fuel for an agile mindset. It keeps individuals adaptable, innovative. It keeps us resilient as well. And by staying updated on industry trends, maybe developing those new skills, sharing these new knowledges that we've acquired with teammates, agile practitioners, if I can call people that, can navigate challenges. We can then move into driving innovation and really grow both personally and professionally. So in essence, I would say continuous learning is the key to sustaining this agile success in this fast-paced world that we live in.
Thank you very much indeed. Great answer. Really appreciate that. Allan, your thoughts, then we'll go to Farah.
if any of you have ever seen my first book, which is over 10 years ago, I argue that Agile is learning. Ultimately, Agile is a process of continuous learning. So you're embracing learning, and learning, it can be scary. I think it was Trotsky who said learning is being vulnerable, and it's opening yourself up and accepting there's things you don't know. So that's why I'd say that we are learning about our customers, our markets. We're learning about the tools and techniques we're using, and we're learning about our processes. Often companies just put so many barriers in the way of learning, whether it's simply not allowing time to have conversations, allowing time for retrospectives, already been mentioned, not allowing people to have a voice, or not giving them psychological safety to allow them to voice those opinions. So you as an individual, you can start by just honoring people's views and working with them on them, and then work for the whole organization to be likewise.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Allan. Great advice there. Let's go. Apologies, I just lost my place a little bit. Farah, thank you. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you so much in the background. Farah,
sure.
Lead us forward if you would do, and then we'll go to Malini.
Okay, thank you. Well, what I wanted to add on this one is that when we speak about continuous learning, we also speak sometimes about continuous testing. When it comes to agile mindset, the teams might sometimes be frightened because they do not know what exactly to apply, what techniques, what kind of, let's say, tools to use in their day-to-day environment, etc. So continuous learning gives them some, let's say, strength when it comes to defining new ways of dealing with problems, with dealing with their, let's say, current topics, etc. So continuous learning does not let's say, is not a plus when it comes to agile mindset, is the basis. And continuous learning means continuous testing. So for the teams, another way to start off on some additional techniques or start off on additional ways to deal with their problems.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Farah. And Malini, final thoughts?
I think continuous learning actually helps teams and organizations become more resilient, because we don't know what's coming around the corner. And when we are open to learning, the thought that something is coming around the corner is no longer scary, because we know we can actually give it a go and learn from the process and become better. In terms of how organizations can promote a culture of learning, I think organizations need to recognize that learning occurs in a variety of different formats. So creating opportunities, for more playful conversations, those informal conversations, as well as formal ways of learning and sharing, I think is very important. And making continuous learning a key part of our performance measures. I see very few organizations actually have performance measures relating to what have we learned and what has improved and what has changed. And even something as simple as that would make a huge difference.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And it is that kind of thinking in action, isn't it? If you're you can't tell what people are thinking. And perhaps that's a good thing, actually, if we think about it for a moment. But what you can observe are people's behaviors. So if you do have a culture of continuous learning, then perhaps what we're starting to see, behaviorally at least, is the development of that desire to have a more agile mindset, and allowing, as Allan mentioned earlier on, and Cindy did, time and space for people to be able to learn new stuff is super important. So thank you very much indeed, Shanice, for that great question, very well phrased, and we really appreciate it. Let's have a little look over at social if we can. We've got a few different folks who are joining from all around the world. So it would be really great just to do a couple of shout outs if we can. That would be fabulous. TD, I just want to say welcome to Abubakar. He's joining from Nigeria. So welcome to you, my friend. Great to have you online and part of the team. And Kath Convery, of course, joining from the UK and a regular contributor to the Level Up community as well. Really great to have you online today, Kath. Be interested in some of your thoughts on the topic of developing that agile mindset in organizations, as you've done much of that work as well. So very good to see you all online. Thank you so much for your contributions. Charlotte, if we can, we'll take our next question for the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a live question from a brand new viewer to Level Up, Dipathy. They ask, Agile aligns more towards spontaneity. How would one calculate being spontaneous without making strategic decisions at the time, not knowing the success rate?
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Deepti, for giving us your question. Mridul, you start us off if you like, and then I'll probably come to Allan next.
Okay. Thank you, Deepti, for a good question, for a tough question. The projects don't exist in isolation. They are always impacted by external circumstances, which keep changing. Today, we are living in a VUCA world. So the external circumstances are changing, and it is the responsibility of the project team, delivery team, to deliver a good value to the customer. So you are very right that they have to be very spontaneous and they have to cope up with the changes which are happening outside in the external environment.
Thank you so much indeed. Excellent. Thank you very much. And Allan, your thoughts on this? And then with your patience, Allan, I'd also like to touch on one of your more recent books as well. But let's start us off with your thoughts on Deepti's question, and then we'll jump into that.
You know, this balance between spontaneity and acting and living in the moment and the strategic, the long, it comes up again and again and again. And it actually comes up in our personal lives. In many ways, it's the ultimate question of life, isn't it? Do I buy the new house for my new family, or do I take a blowout holiday? And then the bad, look at the news, we have to respond. And what I would say is, in an agile world, in an agile mindset, strategy is actually more important. It's like getting a train. You know where you're going. You know what time you need to be there. You have your goal. You get to the station to get your train, and the train's cancelled or delayed. Happens a lot in England. Spontaneity, you have to work out where you're going. If you've got agility, you get there on time as you plan to, but your goal is the same. And this is why, and I like you mentioned in my next book, Nick, I've become attached to OKRs, objectives and key results, because these allow you to set longer term goals, not way out their goals. And once you've set those goals, you set how you're going to measure them, you set your success criteria. And then within that time frame, you iterate and you're agile and all of that. You're spontaneous within that bigger framework.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to, if I may, just kind of show the audience a little bit more about the book, all right, and ask you to talk about it, because I think you're, as the author, you're in a far better place to be able to talk about it than I am. But before I kind of, jump to you, Allan, in kind of talking about this, the thing that I would say is that you've turned what could be a pretty dry topic into something which is eminently accessible. It's easy to read, easy to understand for people, and that's a delight. That's a real talent as an author.
Very kind. Well, when the book first came out, somebody on social media said, I read it in an afternoon. And I said to my wife, that's awful. I spent a year on that book. I think she said, no, it's a great compliment. Yeah. So OKRs, this technique out of Google and Intel about setting objectives and key results, which, if you know Agile, is a bit like test-driven development. Here is the objective, the thing we want to build. And here's our tests for knowing whether we've met it. And unfortunately, often OKRs are seen as return to command and control. And they can be used like that in a top-down fashion. And in the book, I try and talk about using them more as a bottom-up fashion to enroll the teams and involve them. And I think OKRs are for the reasons I just outlined. They set a strategy for a team, and they allow you to iterate in the small with sprints, and iterate in the big with OKRs.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Well, if you're looking for advice on, how to actually go about that, and that may also allow you to manage up your organization in perhaps, a different way to the kind of conflict that you may be experiencing from time to time, then it's worthwhile having a read of that book. Thoroughly recommend it. Farah, you were kind of mentioning as well, just in your thinking around that concept of spontaneity.
Yeah, indeed. What I wanted to add is that spontaneity means that you do not restrict yourself. You do not restrain when speaking up, when, let's say, dealing with new ideas, innovating, whatever you need to do. It does not mean that you're skipping the thinking part or the reflection part.
Thank you. All right. Okay, excellent. Let's move on then, panel. And we've got some great feedback actually in the chat from everybody. Online. We'll come to some of those comments in a few moments. Let's move on if we can then, Charlotte. We'll take our next question for the panel.
Thanks, Nick. Our next question is from Dinesh, who's a live viewer. They ask, what are the challenges of adopting agile methodology?
All right, some challenges then in organizations. Now I'm going to take us out of the era of 15 years ago, where it was unheard of, and move us forward to 2024, because that's the place marker, if you like, in the timeline of the universe that we're speaking in. So let's mix the order up a little bit, I think, if we can. And why don't we start this time with Malini, and then we'll hear from Farah.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks, Dinesh, for a great question. In my experience, the biggest challenge is in organizational leaders not understanding that first and foremost, a shift to agility is actually a culture change, right? They sort of reduce it to a project methodology. They send people off on training and they introduce rituals and so on. But they haven't actually changed how people relate to each other. And in order to become more agile, you actually need to have distributed leadership. You need to have psychological safety. And all of those things actually take considerable effort, in terms of creating that culture.
Thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate that. Farah, please, and then Bina.
And continuing what Malini has just said about the culture, I would say that from my experience, one of the main challenges that I've faced is that people usually think that the agile mindset and the shift is only for IT teams. So that's their stuff, that's their topic. They need to tackle it. They need to manage it from the start till the end. Whereas in reality, well, the shift should be from the C-suite to entry-level employees, whether they are IT or not. So do not limit that shift and that cultural change and transformation only to IT teams. It does not need to be on their shoulders only.
No, I completely agree with that. And in fact, isn't if you asked somebody in the exec suite, what your purpose is, what's the purpose of having a board, what's the purpose of having an executive, in addition to a whole range of other things, they'll start talking about culture. They'll start talking about agility. They'll start talking about driving the business. All of these things mean that you need to lead that process. You can't act as a passenger and just hand that off to a small group of individuals in one particular function in the business. So completely agree with that. Thank you, Farah. Bina, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Allan.
I totally agree with everything that's been said, including what you just mentioned as well, Nick. If we think about the way organizations are used to working, it's more bureaucratic. It's the way we've always done this. Sorry, I just need to cough for a second. One moment. Sorry, so it's moving away from the tried and tested, but trying something new. So instead of bureaucratic, more adhocracy, where we're trying different things. So it's that mindset of shifting from putting aside what we always do, but experimenting, trying something new. But also something that I think Malini said about the organizational structure. It's not so hierarchical kind of thing. It's more horizontal. So it's a different way of managing. So an organization has to understand that this is the way they've got to change. They're not to be so bureaucratic, and also change the way management takes place, giving more emphasis to the teams developing the products, for instance.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Bina, so much. And thank you for, for clearing your throat as well. It sometimes happens, doesn't it? So thank you so much. Allan, your thoughts, please, and then we'll go to Cindy.
So one of the problems that's appeared in the last few years is a problem of success. If we rolled the clock back 10 or 15 years, all of us in the Agile community were pulling our hair out saying, why don't leaders get it? Leaders don't understand us. If you walked into an organization, you'd hear the engineers say, I want to be agile, but my manager won't let me. Today, we've flipped around. And what's happened, as people were just saying, managers are really keen on agile, and it's being pushed down from the executive suite down, and very expensive consultants are being hired to tick lists. And in the process, a lot of people at the sharp end, the engineers and the other people who are trying agile, have become cynical. And they now see this as something the senior exec want and their consultants want. And we've lost that bit by our success at the top level has lost us success at the ground level. So to repeat something that's been said several times already, enroll the people who are doing the work, respect them, allow them to have a say, allow them to have power, and prove to them that this will be better for them as individuals.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much indeed. And Cindy, your thoughts now here from Mridul.
Thank you. And everybody has already said many of the points that I had in mind. But I think something that we also have to keep in mind that could be a potential challenge that we are facing is to scale agility. So when we're scaling agile beyond a single team or just a project, it can introduce additional complexities such as, maybe coordination, alignment, the communication across teams. And when we address these challenges, it does require a combination. And I always come back to education. I do think education, communication, of course, is critical in any change, in change management that we are doing. We need leadership support, and we do need that willingness to adapt and iterate on agile practices. And sometimes based on the unique needs and circumstances on what the specific organization is going through.
Okay, thank you so much. Mridul, I want to catch your thoughts, so we'll come to you next, and then we'll go back to Allan.
Well, I think there are two major challenges. One is the leadership. Is the leadership willing to let go their power to take decisions? Are they willing to accept the self-managed teams? And the second point is the maturity of the team. I use a kind of an example. I'm a father, I'm also a grandfather, that for a teenager child, if you give too much of freedom, he is likely to go astray. And if you control too much, it may be a problem. So you just have to give the right kind of liberties with the kind of remote monitoring, because you cannot. You see, if the maturity is not assessed properly, the agile will prove counterproductive.
Thank you. Absolutely right. Thank you so much. And I love that family metaphor there, because we've all experienced that ourselves, even if we're yet to have a family, or and so on. So it's worthwhile considering that, and it's a good metaphor for governance, isn't it? You want the right level of governance in order to be able to affect the right kind of outcome. In different situations, that mean approaching things in perhaps a different, more stringent fashion. So we're going to move on if we can. Charlotte, time is against us a little bit, so we're going to need to pick up the pace, panel, if we can. Charlotte, what's our next question for the panel, please?
Question is from Quinn. How to deal with people that resist and do not want to shift their mindset to a more agile one?
Surely not. This never happens. Allan, start off our thinking, okay. Then we'll go to Cindy.
So rather than get blocked by the resistors, try and go with those who want to do it, those who win, those who get the idea. Try and work with success, and success breeds success. And as you're doing this, those cynical people, those resistors, as they start to see it happen, as they start to experience it a little bit, then they will start to change their views. I remember a client in Brisbane, and one of their engineers was super cynical when I came to introduce it. I came back the next year, and he was one of the greatest supporters because he'd lived it, he'd experienced it. So sometimes, a bit like kids, you have to know what's right for them and lead them. And as they experience it, their views will change.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much again. There's nothing quite like somebody who's been converted, all right, to a cause to be your strongest advocate. Cindy, your experience of this, and then we'll hear from Mridul.
Thank you so much. So in my experience, I did a pivot and really changed myself to have this agile mindset many years ago when I was working as a sales manager in an organization, highly performing team. I actually I challenged myself, and I then studied coaching, professional coaching, and I pivoted, I changed. And I do remember the CEO of the organization saying to me at the time that it was probably the biggest waste of money to take on, such a thing as coaching and a different coaching style. And when I delivered the results, a year-on-year growth of 120%, the conversation was quite different. So I do think it is understanding the root cause. What is the resistance? What is the reason behind the resistance? Maybe it's something new. Maybe it's something different, and people are skeptic about it and the effectiveness of agility. Yes, tailor your approach and address those underlying concerns, but don't be afraid to go out and try something different. Be brave.
Thank you very much indeed. Be brave, be courageous. Carry that torch for this, and others will see the light that you are projecting on the dark tunnel walls. There you go. There's a little bit of alliteration for you on a Monday, and why not? Charlotte, let's take our next question for the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. So we've got a live question from Manoj, and I've got a little bit of context to add into this. Manoj asks how to best align OKRs with Obeya for building business agility. So Obeya, or big room in Japanese, is a workspace where teams gather to collaborate and coordinate.
Thank you very much indeed. Allan, I'm going to pick on you.
Yeah.
My friend. Can you help us out?
I sometimes wonder whether we can be guilty of trying to tick all the buzzwords and have everyone. We've got agile, agility, OKRs, and Obeyas all in one question. So you don't have to use all these, everybody. So Obeya is the big room, the place where teams meet, where they display their information radiators. But it's more than a place. It's kind of a mindset itself, and it's about involving people and making information clear and obvious. And there are teams now who have virtual Obeyas. I'm not sure about it. So at the simplest level, I think this cuts in with OKRs and what we were saying before. It's about saying, structure your workplace so your goals are very clear, your success criteria for those goals are also clear, and keep coming back to this place physically or virtually and reminding yourself what the goals are. And don't get bogged down in doing backlog item. Regularly, like every week, revisit those goals and say, what work are we doing now that will meet those goals, those OKRs? And the Obeya is the place you meet, which today might be online, but put the goals and the clarity ahead of backlogs and stuff that happens.
Excellent. It's a good advice as well. And I agree with that transition to providing an online big room experience, if I can put it that way, because you can do this. You can do this visually. Think about the beginning of a meeting. How many of your meetings in your organization start with people just joining? All right. And if you're 60 seconds late, then somehow or another, it's not good. The first thing to do, I would say, is schedule your meetings for 45 minutes, not 60. Give people a little bit of a break before the next thing. And the second thing is, you start the meeting with some context. And the reason why I'm saying that is people get bounced from one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next online. That is their lived experience. How can they possibly get a helicopter view without some context setting? So consider that. Consider a summary. Where are we at? Where are we going to? What's the timeline here? What are the milestones that we've reached, et cetera, et cetera? Afford your colleagues an opportunity for context. That's one way of introducing this concept of big room back into an online environment. I'm sure there are practitioners online who could articulate that far better than I've just done, but it's just a little thought for you and something that you can put into practice today. Thank you very much indeed, Allan. Really appreciate that. And I think you're right, my friend. No need to tick every single kind of box and blend them all together. Manoj, I would say it depends. pick the sets that make the most sense for you, my friend. All right, very good. Final question, I think, Charlotte, if we can, to the panel.
Thanks, Nick. Our last question is from one of our panelists, Allan. I've heard that it's said that an agile mindset is just common sense. Is this true?
Okay, well, Allan, with your patience, as you've asked the question, I'm going to come to you last, actually, all right, and move around colleagues on the panel before I get to you. Cindy, why don't you start us off, and then we'll hear from Malini.
Thank you so much. So I do think that when we are saying that an agile mindset is just common sense, we might be oversimplifying things a little bit. While some principles, of course, of agile methodologies, when we're looking at collaboration, flexibility, etc., may seem like common sense in hindsight, but when we are adopting to an agile mindset, we involve a broader shift in our thinking and our behavior. So it's really important that we embrace this change. And I want to come back to iterative development, really breaking down the work into smaller, manageable chunks, based on feedback, having those feedback loops while still creating psychological safety for our team members.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Cindy. Malini, your thoughts, please, then we'll go to Farah.
The interesting thing about common sense is that it's actually not very common. It's often one of the most uncommon things around, right? And I think that the thing with the agile mindset, to Cindy's point, is that when you look at things individually, such as collaboration or customer centricity and continuous learning, these are things that are commonly understood or easy for people to understand. And almost intuitively, we understand what these things mean. But pulling it all together and maintaining that as a way of thinking and being in a consistent way, right? That's what we mean by agile mindset in an organizational context. And that requires us to be very intentional, to put some specific commitment and support towards this. And that's actually not very common at all.
I love that. I absolutely love that, Malini. I agree with you. Specificity, explicitly, however you wish to, whatever adverb you want to use, but you need to do it. Do it out loud. Say it out loud. Be the behavior that you want to see amongst others. Thank you very much indeed. Completely agree with that. Farah, your thoughts, and then we're going to go to Allan.
Well, I do completely agree with what my fellow panelist has just said. I mean, when we're speaking about common sense, we feel like it's something that is quite easy to tackle. From a day to another, we're all moving to the agile mindset, and everything is going, let's say, in the best way. The difficulty behind the common sense is that it's the roots of an organization. It's the roots of a team. So when you try to tackle that common sense by speaking about collaboration, about trust, about dealing with face-to-face meeting rather than a virtual meeting, whatever, well, it might be really difficult for people to move from what they had in mind, what they experienced, what they used to do, to that common sense that seems that easy to implement. So for you, it might seem like it's common sense because you're used to it. You experienced it in your previous teams, in your previous organizations. But for other people, that common sense might be a huge mountain to climb. So do not oversimplify the agile mindset by saying that it's common sense, because for people that are in your team, it might be, let's say, received as something that is quite negative because they feel that they are climbing a mountain, that it's not common sense for them.
Understand completely and very well articulated. Thank you very much indeed, Farah. There's lots of value in that answer now. And Allan, you posed the question, I don't think rhetorically entirely, but nonetheless, it's something clearly which is on your mind. Yeah. Help us out.
I think sometimes this kind of fits in what Farah is saying. Sometimes people kind of dismiss agile and the level of the change. They say, oh, this is just common sense. Other times, the fact that people are saying this is common sense is showing that they've completely assimilated the ideas. And it's almost like one of those pictures, where you look at it, it's a candlestick, except if you look at it, it's two women facing each other. And it's common once you've flipped your mind into the agile mindset. But until you've done that, you don't see it at all. So something like work in progress. It's common sense that we should start work as soon as we can, shouldn't we? But once you understand flow and work in progress, and you realize that more work can mean less work coming out the other end, and once you can see the work in progress, your logic is reversed. So it requires a brain flip.
I absolutely agree with that. There's a fine line, isn't there, between hitting the ground running as a new starter to an organization with a, aggressive induction program, and the participant feeling like they're drinking from a fire hose. Whilst refreshing, it's not the most pleasant experience in life, and you're unlikely to retain all of the information which is being blasted in your direction. So absolutely agree with that. Thank you very much indeed, Allan. Well, what a fantastic episode we've been sharing today as we develop our own mental agility and think about the agile mindset and so on. So let's get some closing remarks from our panel. We'll kind of walk around in sequence if we can. So Malini, I'm going to come to you first, if I may, and then Farah.
Thank you for this wonderful conversation. In the spirit of continuous learning, I'm reading a fantastic book at the moment by someone who's frequently on a Level Up, Giles Lindsay, and the book is called Clearly Agile: A Leadership Guide to Business Agility, and I highly recommend it to anyone interested in the agile mindset.
Excellent. Now, I've not read that one yet, so I'm glad that someone on the panel is ahead of me on this particular book. So we'll try and get a link out into the chat for everybody momentarily on that one. So thank you very much indeed, Malini. Farah, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Cindy.
Well, first of all, thanks for all of the questions that are coming up from the viewers. Really challenging and tough sometimes for both of them. What I can add on this topic, and something that I have, tested a lot of time, is when you're driving an agile change, an agile transformation, and trying to figure out what would be the best to get that agile mindset in your team, do not, forget to share your own experience. Some people might relate. And I say this because when I first started with Agile, it was quite difficult for me. Whereas today, in an Agilist, I'm someone that is quite interested by this topic, always dynamic about it and whatever. So share your own experience. Some people might relate and it can help you.
Thank you so much indeed. Cindy, and then we'll go to Bina.
Thank you so much. I've got a few short, powerful little punchy phrases that I want to just share with you. And these are just my thoughts in terms of the summary of what we've discussed today. So in terms of an agile mindset, we need to embrace the change. We need to collaborate closely, iterate relentlessly, empower our teams, and we need to pursue continuous improvement.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And those short, sharp sound bites are really good things to bear in mind. Make a little note, and then you can refer back to them throughout your week and, see if you've been able to, at least help others to do any of those, which is really great. Thank you, Cindy. Bina, and then Allan.
I just want to say that you can be agile in your not just in your work life, but your home life. You can start being agile today. If you're always having fish and chips on Friday or always cooking a meal a certain way, why not experiment? Why not try something different? You might surprise yourself. So be agile today in whatever you're doing. And the last thing I want to mention is a certification that is from the APMG. It's Agile Project Management. It's one that I teach and it's fantastic. Well worth looking into.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. It really does help you get your head around, how to approach this. And I absolutely, in work, outside of work, in family life, in your volunteering life as well, in clubs and societies and these kinds of things, highly applicable. Allan, and then Mridul, please.
So we've talked a lot about learning, which is quite correct. But there's no point to learning if you don't put it into action. You need to take that learning, do something with it, which leads to my mantra that the only thing you can do wrong in Agile is to do it the same as you did 3 months ago. Always be looking for opportunities to do things differently. Not all of those changes will be better, and some of them you'll reverse out. But if you're not finding opportunities and trying something different, how are you ever going to learn? How are you ever going to improve? So the only thing you do wrong is to work the same as you used to.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. And Mridul, your closing remarks for today?
Well, I think books do help in charting your internal journey, because agility is, to my mind, is more of an internal journey, where a person has to find out that where he has formed assumptions, where he has formed opinions, and where he is too rigid and not willing to change. So this is about the journey part. As far as the certifications are concerned, of course, what Bina has recommended, I think I also support her, for Agile project management. Very interesting, very useful. And also, I believe that Agile business analyst also will have a good future, because I have a feeling, in fact, long back, I went into change management, and today change management is in thing. But today, I mean, I may not be there to see that, but I feel that Agile business analyst also has a good future.
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much indeed. Now, Charlotte, you've been navigating your way through the social chat and thinking about the questions and, surfacing those for everybody. And we've had an eclectic mix of people online today in the audience sharing their thoughts and ideas. Your reflections on today's episode?
It's been an amazing episode, Nick. I'm sorry to all those viewers that were unable to ask their question that they submitted live. We will do another episode on this topic, so we will follow up on those questions that we've missed. Thanks to our panel and for your expert contributions and the team behind it. Quote from me, Agile is about adapting to change. It was built on the foundation principle that business drivers will change the development of teams, and we must be ready to adapt. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Thomas A. Edison.
There you go. And he knew something about resilience, didn't he, really? Man who famously had to iterate through multiple versions of prototypes before he was able to come up with a formula that actually worked in real life. So thank you very much indeed for that, Charlotte. Great summary on today's episode. I'd like to thank, on behalf of the panel, all of our producers online today. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas. It's a community of learning, of course. That's what leveling up your career is all about, working together collectively as a community with others and building your career. On your behalf as well, I'd like to thank our panel for giving us their time so generously today. If you'd like to connect with the panel, then just visit apmginternational.com, look for events, and you'll find today's event available to you, and then a little link through to the LinkedIn profile of each of the panelists. So do feel free to reach out to them and connect with them and begin that process of your career. Now then, also over on our website, you may, of course, search for answers to more than 2,300 previously asked and answered questions. It's totally free of charge, and it connects you with experts from all over the world. And you may also, of course, listen to the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. Just search for APMG International, Level Up Your Career, and you will find us easily enough. Looking ahead in the calendar, coming up this Friday on the 19th of April, it's all about service management. And we're going to be talking about focusing in on how to break into that most rewarding profession. Monday the 22nd, then, back at 8 a.m. UK time, we're sharing strategies on how to secure your future, not just as an individual, but also, managers, executives, everybody, thinking about that at the moment. So let's have a great conversation about that and our own professional development within that. Friday the 26th at 2, and we're going to dive into how to become a NIST cyber security professional. It'll be a great show. Don't forget, head over to our YouTube channel. Do give this video a like, please, and subscribe. It takes but a moment of your time, and it makes a huge difference to the discoverability of content for others. Just ask us, and we will send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time.